It's interesting that you ask that, because I've been lately thinking a lot about the relevance of memory, or how we store memory, or what evokes memory, because I think we have a lot of memory in us. But if somebody asks you, what have you eaten 3 days ago, you probably wouldn't know.
You don't remember.
So you always need something which triggers it. So we have objects, light, smell. All the senses bring us to places where we've been before, and they bring memories up. But I think a lot of aspects which make me an artist now are sort of very traceable back to childhood, where my parents would work on a field, and I would have a few hours to play in the forest, and I would build a building.
Yeah.
So wherever you basically would situate me, I would build something which would shelter. And of course you can then sort of, you wonder what's the relevance for, what is the relevance for work, not in a literal way, it's not that I picture that, it's not that I illustrate that, but I think it is a sensory sensibility for materials, which are materials which have a strong sense of temperature, insulation, materials. I work with a lot of organic, or let's see, natural materials in relationship to material which contradict those qualities. And if I look at the work, there's obviously also a color palette which has a certain temperature.
Yeah.
I mean, I can call into life a very vivid memory of the temperature of the stones of the house, certain kind of carpets, but also sort of lying on the sofa with a blanket, the smell of a blanket, or even if you would cry into a cushion, what kind of smells the tears would bring out of a cushion, or a pillow, and the smell of animals. Of course, I was surrounded with a lot of animal.
Do you choose the materials thinking of that?
Accordingly? Yeah. No, but I think I've developed a grid, or a sensory apparatus within myself, which is subconsciously drawn to certain materials because they're more meaningful. And because they're meaningful to me, I'm probably also able to convey more meaning with them than a material which is not familiar to me, which as a matter of fact is probably the other side of my work, that I sometimes try to overcome. Constantly try to stretch a comfort zone in which I work. That is my engagement with work. I would be bored to reproduce the same thing. Something I mentioned is that my investment in seasons, so living somewhere where you have seasons, is the one that each season brought something different. So a whole part of my existence would fall away if I would indeed live I could never live in San Francisco with the same weather all year round. I would get lost in time, and I would get lost in space, because I need those indications. I thrive by the change of seasons and rhythm, and that is something which is probably a tool I early on learned to make sense of the world around me. I went to the Pre-Columbian Museum, and there is this, I don't know, it appears as a necklace, but it is this rope, and to that rope are hundreds of ropes attached, and to those ropes are ropes attached, and it has it's this kind of work where you see it and you see, fuck, I wish I would have. No, really, you wish you had. I mean, why have I not made that? That's the best piece ever. But it's a result out of different circumstances. So I think the problem with our making process is that we always want so hard to make something, and we want a shortcut. We want to get to that thing. But I think what we sort of that is impossible. You cannot force it.
And in that case, how do you feel? How do you deal with frustration, for example, like when you're in the process of making, because you have you came with a lot of unfinished pieces. So how do you deal with that? Do you feel like then finish is finished, or you just leave it because it's something that can work for later, or you just leave it?
Or it's just at its best.
Yeah.
Lingering in that space of potential becoming, but if you would define it 100%, it would lose instead of gain.
Yeah.
And I think I'm just at the verge of a moment where I can accept that I'm just going to keep working, and then maybe later on people will decide which works really worked and which not.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to take away the pressure that I have to judge everything I make.
Uh-huh. So you're more of a person that learns through process than doing projects.
I learn a lot from my hands.
Uh-huh.
Good teachers, they very often do things I cannot predict. I really learn through process, and I have learned to trust the process, to lose myself. I mean, I'm constantly trying to find the moment where I lose myself in the process, which takes me somewhere. Yeah. And then, of course, you have this balance act of getting insight in what you do, learning from what you do, but not forcing it. And that is a very precarious and sort of fragile, it's a very small line to walk, and you tip over to one side or the other. And that is frustration, but I also think that sometimes you have to sit in your frustration because it will end. I mean, that's the only thing I know. It will, it will end.
Eventually. And what about time? Like, how do you know when it's finished? How do you feel it?
Because it's done at that moment.
It tells you that it's finished.
It tells me that it is finished, or sometimes I make the decision that it is finished. But I've also picked up works out of the past and took them to a different place.
Okay, yeah.
And I would not say that they were not finished at the time. They were finished at that time, but they're not finished in a different moment.
In the timeline.
Yeah. I don't know what the future brings.
Yeah.
I think if I would have known 20 years ago how the next 20 years would look like, oh my god. Now I can say I survived a lot of things, but if I would have known that before, I would have probably sat in a corner and not moved anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm really happy that I don't know what the next 20, maybe 30 years are going to bring. I'm curious, and I'm in a conflict of time. It's weird. I'm thinking a lot about time, time and aging, because I'm so aware that you are positioned by people around you who perceive you as somebody from a certain time with a certain, I mean, of course, with a certain experience, but they have actually no clue what's going on. If you live in the here and now, it's not that you are already history. No, but that is sort of something I think there's no way of escaping it, so I have to figure that out with myself in order to keep the space open in which I want to exist. But it is increasingly, when you get older, a lot of trouble to fight off all the preconceived notions and the projections of others. Yeah. It's amazing how much people project on you, and it is not just, I mean, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. I mean, it's not helpful for me, and I don't want to deal with it. And I have to something like that. Figure that out for yourself. That says more about you than about me.
And if you look back to this person making houses and when you were a child, can you make like a direct connection, sort of like a time traveling, and go there and be like, yeah, that tells me that I work on this, you know, like it was so obvious.
It's not that I don't know. I am there every day.
Yeah.
I am that child every day. I feel that joy. I feel the easiness of doing certain things. I feel the affinity with materials and situations. The only thing I'm struggling with is that, especially those things, I have been cultured, and I measure constantly things, if they are efficient and if they are actually sort of Is that something which will work in a body of work? Or do I sometimes just play around?
Yeah, I get that feeling. Yeah.
So sometimes I just play around, and although I know it is necessary, I'm in this inner monologue, and it's nearly as if I'm sort of talking with myself in three languages. I'm like, it's okay, you can do it now, and I shouldn't do it. Really, like, you can do it for another hour, and then you have to do something else. Oh, it's 2 hours, well, the day is wasted. Okay, tomorrow we're going to do it different. I negotiate with myself constantly in order to be allowed to lose myself in something.
Yeah.
While on the other hand, it's all I want to do. I want to lose myself in things. I literally have to say it aloud and hear that somebody still likes me fine if I've not changed the world in the last 2 days.
I get it completely. Thank you. It was very nice. So yeah, it was a quick one.